Dear participants of the symposium dedicated to the celebration 70th anniversary celebration of the Institute for Lifelong Learning of UNESCO. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to panel 5 themed citizenship and the role of lifelong learning in the current context of wars, conflicts, including the devastating war in Ukraine, declining democracies overall in the world, and rising autocracies, climate crisis, demographic shifts and migration, and increasing role of digital technologies on our role as citizens, our perceptions and actions, but also the role of the states in using and limiting the potential as well as threats of offered by these technologies in the current context, particular role of the social media in overall situation in terms of our actions as citizens. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that this week UNESCO is marking as usual annually the week of global media and information literacy, which, as many of you know, that media and information literacy has become as integral part of our today's education and learning, and lifelong learning in particular, and as a critical competency of citizenship. Secondly, I also want to highlight that the theme citizenship is not new to UIL. It has been always an important part of our institute's work since its inception. It was found, our institute was found in times when the world needed more opportunities for developing international understanding and cooperation, and particular context of Second World War, after Second World War, the need for renewing their engagement between Germany and the international community, with specific emphasis on humanistic education and intercultural understanding, but also act as a mediator during the Cold War period and emphasize on international cooperation. In fact, the first seminar, which was organized by our institute, then called UNESCO Institute for Education, was adult education as a means of developing and strengthening social and political responsibility. UNESCO's recommendation on adult learning and education enlists citizenship education as one of the 3 learning areas. And in that, citizenship education is understood as needing or requiring policies, programs, and financial allocations to continue developing knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes to develop ourselves as active, responsible, and informed citizens. To remind us all that adults and young people are voters whose votes could shape the policies of the governments locally, nationally, but also globally. Historically, citizenship has been linked with the legal status enjoyed by a certain group of populations. It has been a contested notion, and when applied today, it is still contested because we still have situations or contexts when certain group of populations are still excluded. I would like to highlight, especially linking it to the previous panel on demographic shifts, we still have migrants, refugees not accounted as citizens and enjoy similar kind of rights and responsibilities of the citizens of nation states. We also know that some of the local communities historically being disadvantaged and excluded and not being recognized as citizens. So in this context, I want to highlight that in the globalized world, citizenship is also being included or extended to include this sense of belonging to a broader community and common humanity, also emphasizing political, economic, social, and cultural interdependency and interconnectedness between the local, the national, and the global. More than ever, we as humanity realize our interconnectedness due to global challenges, including peace and climate crisis, which were highlighted in the previous 2 panels in the morning. And we also would like to invite now, before that, I would like to introduce myself. I'm really sorry I jumped right away to the theme. My name is Rahat Joldoshaliyeva, and I am one of the team leaders at the Institute. And it is a pleasure to welcome the speakers of this panel. We will have in total 4 speakers. The first speaker is Ms. Monika Fröhler. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and her speech will be was given to us through recorded video. We'll be playing that video message very soon. The presentation on the UILs, some of the UILs activities will be given by my colleague, Ms. Christiana Nikolitsa-Winter. She's the program specialist at UIL. And we have 2 wonderful respondents joining us live today on this panel. Ms. Charmaine Barrett, Vice President of the International Council for Adult Education, ICAI, and representing Caribbean region, and Mr. Riley Lapalin, Chair of the Bridge 47 and from the Republic of Finland. I would like to invite or request all the participants of this panel, please post your questions if you have any during the presentation of the speakers to the question and answer box, and leave the chat box for the information which is being shared by our colleagues for important links to materials or information related to the theme. And I would like to also request or invite the participants of this panel to please share good practices in the area of citizenship education in the chat box, if possible. And with the questions which will be posted on the question and answer, some of them will be responded in writing by my colleagues, but by also speakers. I would like to invite speakers to actively engage in writing on the question and answer section, but some of them will be also taken up in the live question and answer session if the time allows us to do so. So without further ado, I would like to request one of my colleagues to please play the video recorded from Ms. Fröhler. And we'll continue our live presentations after that.
Distinguished fellow speakers, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear global citizens. My name is Monika Fröhler and I am the CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens in Vienna. It is my great pleasure and honor to address you today on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and to share some thoughts and reflections with this diligently selected and inspiring panel on the role of citizenship. Citizenship, and particularly global citizenship education, in the framework of lifelong learning is very dear to my heart and forms a cornerstone of our work at the Ban Ki-moon Center. In 2015, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted unanimously by all UN member states in New York under the leadership of SG Ban Ki-moon. It was clear that a common sense of ownership was required to make sustainable, inclusive development a reality and to implement the 17 Sustainable Development Goals within a global partnership framework. It was equally clear that quality education would play a central role in instilling this sense of common ownership. We need to act with passion and compassion towards a common goal and towards one another. In other words, we need to be global citizens. SDG 4 on quality education, target 4.7, highlights the need to foster such global citizenship and education for sustainable development, to empower learners of all ages to be active in implementing the SDGs and to transform education. Indeed, it is of utmost importance that we equip our current and future generations with the knowledge, the skills and values necessary to overcome these challenges that we are facing today. We must all understand that political instability, inequality, climate change, discrimination and injustice, wherever they happen, affects us all, locally and globally. No one is an island. That is why transformative education and a constant re-evaluation of the way we conceive ourselves and our place in the world is of such fundamental importance and demands an ongoing learning. It is a lifelong task. At the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, we are taking active steps in promoting the role of global citizenship education to tackle global challenges of today and tomorrow. We do that through public and informal diplomacy. We engage with leaders, youth, academia, international organizations and civil society at all levels to promote global citizen values and global citizenship education. Our GCED online courses help with this, and we co-develop them with UNESCO Apseyo and spread the knowledge on global citizenship and gender equality far and wide in a publicly accessible way and completely free of charge. We have received over 30,000 registrations today from all corners of the world. As part of our Global Citizenship Scholarship Program, the Ban Ki-moon Center granted 17 scholarships to young changemakers from Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria and the Philippines this year alone. The program empowers exceptional young people by facilitating their participation in international conferences, as well as tailor-making short-term academic trainings and supporting and mentoring them during the development of their own so-called SDG micro-projects. They tackle one or more SDGs on a local, national and sometimes even international level. To date, a total of 221 such SDG micro-projects have been ideated, proposed and implemented in areas ranging from food access to renewables to energy projects, sustainable to construction, reforestation, education and employment programs. It also sometimes takes digital means, digital storytelling to create change, but creativity is literally endless. Our work notably also includes close cooperation with UNESCO. In September, the Ban Ki-moon Center, alongside with UNESCO and the Republic of Korea and the Republic of Finland, and with the support of Italy and Belize, we staged an official side event at the Transforming Education Summit in New York on global citizenship education. We brought together key decision makers and knowledge experts to discuss and inform global strategy on advancing progress towards GCED. First, it was recognized that states need to increase their ambition regarding the inclusion of the principles of global citizenship education within their national education policies by committing to integrate these principles in formal curricula, as well as to encourage the uptake in informal educational settings and, of course, lifelong learning. Secondly, there is a continued need of taking concrete action in global fora, such as today's event, to bring global citizenship principles to the discussion tables and inspire others to join efforts in realizing the SDGs and particularly 4.7, and to learn from best practice examples. Third, it is crucial to actively engage with experts, practitioners, champions and youth representatives to better understand state-of-the-art developments in educational needs and learn from whole of institutional approaches. Global citizenship and sustainable development are two sides of the same coin. Fourth, we need to support practitioners by encouraging research and innovation in teaching methodologies and facilitating easy access to teacher training in this field. And lastly, we have to continue the development of concrete teaching materials for global citizenship education. Ladies and gentlemen, the window of opportunity to transform education is now, to ensure that all lifelong learners are empowered and inspired to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals and act as global citizens. Achieving the SDGs is our global plan for a prosperous and peaceful world. It is our calling as global citizens to seek a brighter and more sustainable tomorrow for all. Let us utilize the opportunities and perspectives discussed today to create a brighter world, leaving no one behind. I wish you a fruitful discussion and send you my best regards from Vienna. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Ms. Frole for these wonderful words of opening this panel on citizenship. And with us today, the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens will be also represented by Mr. Philip Harnick, who is available for question and answer section after the presentations. I would like now to go to the next speaker, and would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Christiana Nicolza-Winter, who is going to present some of the work at UIL that are happening or will be happening in the future on the theme of citizenship from a lifelong learning perspective. Christiana, it's over to you. And you have 8 minutes to respond to this. Yeah. You.
Thank you, dear Rahat, for your introduction. I'm still waiting that my PowerPoint is shared. I would like, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Hamburg. I would like to thank Mrs. Fröhler for a very insightful introductory video message. Philip, please convey this to her. The UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning has citizenship education as one of its priorities in its work. I would like to share with you a quick overview of the work of UIL on citizenship education through some recent projects as well as some plans for the near future. Citizenship education is fundamental in promoting a gender-responsive lifelong learning culture that supports learning to live together, caring for the planet, our societies and ourselves, and in fostering democratic values and a commitment to leave no one behind. Global citizenship education, as we all know, is a key enabler of Sustainable Development Goal 4.7 and to the realization of the whole 2030 agenda. What has UIL done on citizenship education? Now, first of all, the 5th Global Report on Adult Learning and Education that was published in June 2022, following its mandate given to Confintea 6 in 2010, UIL regularly produces the reports on adult learning and education, GRAIL, that monitor adult learning and education. So far, 5 issues of GRAIL have been published. The last report, GRAIL 5, focuses on citizenship education in response largely to the findings of GRAIL 4 that active citizenship and community cohesion were largely ignored by policymakers. The GRAIL 5 survey showed that almost 3/4 of responding countries were developing or implementing policies in relation to citizenship education. The report argues that citizenship education must be a key dimension of our response to global challenges such as migration, digitalization, and the climate crisis. GRAIL 5 calls for member states to place adult learning and education at the center of efforts to achieve sustainable societies and recognize its key role in developing integrated and holistic solutions. We are grateful to our partners who are in the panel, Bridge 47 and ICAE, as well as to other partners for their valuable inputs in this report. Well, what is the way forward? How do we proceed now? As most of you know, the 7th International Conference of Adult Learning and Education, Confintea 7, was held last June in Marrakesh. The outcome document of Confintea 7, the Marrakesh Framework for Action, highlights education as a human right, which includes the right to participation as an enabler of empowerment and of active and global citizenship. The Framework for Action gave the mandate to UNESCO to continue monitoring adult learning and education on a global level through GRAIL. In addition to monitoring the MFA, GRAIL will also continue monitoring the 3 fields of learning that my colleague Rahat mentioned before, the 3 fields of learning of the recommendation on adult learning and education: literacy, vocational training, and active citizenship education. UIL will further develop indicators and tools to monitor the provision of citizenship education in adult learning and education. Another project of UIL was the publication addressing global citizenship education in adult learning and education, a summary report that was published in 2019, supported by the UNESCO Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding. The report brings up cases in the 5 UNESCO regions, highlighting the role of literacy and the critical importance of entry and access points of AIL, such as cultural centers, libraries, museums, etc., in strengthening global citizenship education opportunities for adults. It stresses the need to improve the professionalization of adult educators. And as Mrs. Fröhler mentioned, the lack of professionalization of adult educators still hinders progress towards the provision of lifelong learning opportunities in many countries around the world. UIL will continue to contribute to improving the quality of adult learning and education provision by enhancing the national capacity of adult educators. So it will continue its work on Curriculum Globale. This is a cross-cultural core curriculum for training adult educators worldwide. It was published in 2021, and the report was, this publication was jointly conducted by the German Institute for Adult Education and DVV International, the Institute of International Cooperation of the German Adult Education Association, and ICAI, the International Council on Adult Education. It describes the relevant skills needed to work in any educational sector, field and form, and provides guidance on their practical implementation. In the next years,
Christiana, you have 2 minutes, please.
Yes. Curriculum Globale will be contextualized and implemented in various countries with UIL partners. UIL will also conduct global research and country case studies on how teacher professional development can be designed from the lifelong learning perspective to effectively support students as lifelong learners. Another project we are working on is the UNESCO Global Network on Learning Cities and the cluster on citizenship education. This network will be, the information on this network will be presented to you in panel 5. The network, as I said, it is organized in five thematic clusters, including one on citizenship education. In 2020, the GNLC cluster on citizenship education published the report Citizenship Education for Democratic and Sustainable Communities, showing the work of the cluster by bringing up good practices throughout 38 city members of the cluster. We will continue documenting innovations and good practices for citizenship education in local governments and produce tools for including citizenship education as an instrument for community participation and empowerment and promoting gender equality. So this was a very quick overview of the main projects of UIL in citizenship education. I would like to add that UIL is contributing to one of UNESCO's major projects, the revision of the recommendation concerning education for international understanding, cooperation and peace and education relating to human rights and fundamental freedom, the 1974 recommendation. It goes without saying that we hope to continue our partnerships such as ICAI and Bridge 77 and other current partners, and we also expect to widen our network to arrive to some fruitful results. Let me close by underlining that citizenship education is UNESCO's response to challenges such as inequality, including gender inequality and extremism, misinformation, and that threaten peace and sustainability. It is not possible to build a just, sustainable, and peaceful world if all human beings do not have access in lifelong learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for Christiana for being on time, but also highlighting the important activities that are being carried out and will be carried out by UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. And I'm sure there will be questions related to specific projects. And I would like you to be responding to some of the questions if they are posted on the question and answer box. Without further ado, I'd like to invite two of the respondents to be ready. First respondent to this panel is Ms. Charmaine Barrett, Vice President of International Council for Adult Education. And we requested Ms. Barrett to respond to two questions. The first question we requested to share ICAI's views on citizenship education. And the second question is for her comments on the UIL's activities, which are being done currently, but also foreseen in the near future. Ms. Barrett, the floor is yours.
Okay,
you have 5 minutes, and I will be reminding you when you have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. First, I'd like to, on behalf of the International Council for Adult Education, to congratulate UIL on its 70th anniversary. And secondly, I'd like to express my appreciation for the invitation to present. I hope my comments will answer the two questions. I'm not going to separate them within 5 minutes, a little challenging to do that.
Sorry, Ms. Burnett, could you please click on the full screen, because we don't see the full screen of your presentation. Yeah.
That's a challenge because I am on full screen where I am.
Okay, you could.
I don't like that at all.
All right.
Are you seeing it better now?
Not in the presentation mode. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Make it larger.
Yeah, could you please enlarge it? If not, my colleagues are ready to share it, your presentation. Will you be okay? You can start and consider it.
As long as they move with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I ask my colleagues, please share in full screen? Thank you, and over to you. Sorry.
Okay, so, right. So the next slide then. Okay, next slide, please. Right. So when we look at the definition of citizenship, I want to say that there are some words that jump out at us, and the first two presenters did speak to some of those. We have peace, tolerance, inclusion, sustainable world, common shared values. Next slide, please. And when we hear these words, for me, it speaks from a philosophical perspective of cooperation, shared values, collectivism, interrelatedness. But my main contribution to this morning's reflection is that I believe that this philosophical perspective is in dissonance with a dominant worldview. And that worldview is around individualism, self-interest, self-preservation. And that at the root of many of our challenges, as highlighted in the first speaker, is right there. And some of those highlighted by UIL in their presentation. But among those are, next slide, I would like to highlight some others. The inequity and inequalities of all manner that many of us on this platform also experience. The rich getting richer and the poor poorer. And the divide between the haves and the have-not continue to widen. Many societies continue to be beleaguered by racism and classism that excludes many while valuing some. There's a polarized political, religious, and economic perspective that have many persons within their own communities fearing for their lives. Then there is the digital divide that the global pandemic just laid bare before us. And of course, what is uppermost is the matter of climate change. And here I have highlighted the inappropriate use of the natural environment and the generation of waste that damage the natural environment. And so the question I would challenge UIL with, and anyone else, is who is our target of the subject of citizenship education? And can we truly achieve the outcomes of citizenship education without addressing these larger issues? I was really fascinated by the presentation, the first presentation, that really speak to some of the attempts to address these larger issues. And my work in Bridge 40 with Bridge 47 does speak to that. But I'd like to just challenge us to think through those things. Next slide, please. And to say that many would believe that citizenship education is clearly just an idealist perspective. But I would hasten to ask, should that mean that we should not seek to achieve the objectives of citizenship education? And my answer would be, we should, and we can, and we have been, and we need to deepen that. And I'd like here now to commit and to share that the International Council for Adult Education is committed to this agenda and supports UIL in its own agenda. But what is very clear is that citizenship education must be addressed at all levels of society and within all institutions of our societies, and should go beyond the boundaries of education to the political and economic agencies of society in order to facilitate this change. Next slide. But at the individual level, we would argue that citizenship education should, at the individual level, as we address our adults, should counter the dominant worldview of individualism, of self-interest and self-preservation, while helping the citizens to develop the dispositions and skills, the competencies to embrace this notion of citizenship education right at the individual level. And then it should aim to build that individual's competencies and sense of agency while developing some sense of belonging in a community. And in that regard, we want to salute the work of UIL, the work of the Ban Ki-moon Center, and although the work that was done by Bridge 47 and all other entities that are engaging in this work, because we have got to combat and push against extremism, individualism, and those things that go against the collective. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on time. Thank you so much for these very important questions that you have raised to UIL. I believe that these questions are actually critical for many people who are participating in the symposium, in the panel today, also not just speakers, but just participants as well. And I am sure that we'll have time to address some of these elements in their discussions too. May I request now to invite I would like to invite Mr. Rili Lapaninen, Chair of the Bridge 47, and to please speak to and present the views of Bridge 47 on citizenship education, but also activities that you carry out, but also comment on the UIL's activities presented by my colleague Christiana. And you have also 5 minutes to respond to these questions.
Thank you very much. May I ask that the Secretariat could put my slide presentations as well on?
Yeah.
It would be easier to get it right. Thank you very much. And in meanwhile, waiting to start, congratulations also from our side to the UIL. It's really great that you have a really absolutely great history, but I think that you have even better future. And definitely the work, what you're doing is extremely needed, and we have been extremely proud to be the partner on the path with you and hope to continue that. So congratulations from our side, and thank you very much for inviting us to join. So I'm proud to present the Bridge 47. I'm going to more in the detail a little bit in a second on there, but if you could put second slide, I just would like to highlight this aspect. I'm not really repeating what many previous speakers mentioned earlier on that, but I really think that exactly the whole 4.7 and of course the goal 4, but especially for the 4.7 target is extremely important for achieving every single goal and the target under the Agenda 2030. So somehow exactly when we are reading the whole Agenda 2030 framework, let's say the philosophy on there, for me, it is the global citizenship education. Because without the actions, what the individuals do, we can't really achieve about the Agenda 2030 and not the sustainable development to all of us, every human beings in this planet, and taking account about the limits what we are having in this planet. So again, about the Agenda 2030 5 Ps, when we're talking about partnership, prosperity, planet, peace, and now I'm forgetting what is the 5P, but the planet, I think it is. The people, definitely, that's the most important one. Without all of those at the same time, we can't really achieve about the goals. And here you can see many examples how exactly the education definitely plays very, very important role. Just highlighting, for example, the goal number 16, the peace, where exactly one of the cornerstones of building about a global community is really started from building peace. And unfortunately, we are living now in the circumstances where we have more wars and violent conflicts in the world than we had during the Second World War. So I think that we have failed somehow, but I think believe that using the potential of the education, which all is as aspects with the formal, informal and non-formal education, including adult education, lifelong learning, life-wide education, we can make the change. Can I have the next slide, please? So we in the Bridge 47, we are the global network. We have more than 1,000 people all over the world and many partner organizations like ICAI, for example, like UIL, like Ban Ki-moon Center, etc. But the whole point is that we would like to offer the space for the platform for those people who are acting on behalf of the SDG 4.7. And what they do is really different kind of activities. Some of them are really practitioners who are really solving the problems in the indigenous communities, or they are doing that in the schoolrooms. They are doing that as activists in front of the banks or whatever places. We have a lot of us who are doing quite a lot of advocacy. So exactly bring together these people and really learning, because we also want to learn, because these things are so complex. We need to learn and empower, engage each other to be capable to do our work wherever we are. Another very important point for us is the advocacy, and we have recognized that exactly it's quite a lone job, but we're happy to do that. And for example, the Transforming Education Summit, which was mentioned by Monica from the Ban Ki-moon Center, that was one of the places where we managed to really highlight also the importance of the SDG 4.7. And we will continue that work in the global, in the regional levels as well, and in the national level. And through the network, we are capable to do that, and really happy about the people who are doing a really amazing job wherever they are, active lobbyists, really making sure that we have the political recognition, we have the space and importance underlined, and also the resources to do the global citizenship education in practice. The partnership not only with the civil society organizations or educational organizations is extremely important, because in this complex world we need to partner with academics, we need to partner with private sector, we need to partner with media, we need to partner with everyone who share the same common values, and we would like to get the impact to be happened. That's also is a place where we can really understand each other. It's a part of the dialogue, learning from each other and understanding the different point of views, and build on the consensus and common interest, and then defining the practical solutions. And then the innovations, which is extremely important one, because we definitely need to really use all of the possible opportunities, where definitely technology is one, but not everything. We need a lot of...
Sorry, Mr. Riley, you have 1 minute to wrap.
Yeah, thanks. That's fine. I'm almost concluding. We need the knowledge from the indigenous people. We need the knowledge of the young people. We need the knowledge from the elderly people as well. But all of those together, is that how we're trying to operate? So offering the spaces where we can really transform, because definitely we all need to transform the whole societies where we're living, the whole global machinery, how we have set it up. It doesn't really function equally at the moment. Like Sherman very rightly mentioned, that exactly we are getting even worse direction at the moment, but we need to offer the spaces where we can also build the ideas how we can move on. And that's why we want to build the bridges between the different actors and different topics, and then finding the solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your very interesting presentation on the Bridge 47 in particular, and the UIL is also happy to collaborate and partner with you on promoting citizenship education from a lifelong learning perspective, with a specific emphasis on adults and youth as well. And very nice component that you have highlighted is that the building partnerships is critical in actually developing global citizenship work that we do across the world, and bring together the different partners, and not just the academia, governments, or but also private sector and youth. I would like now, either it is the lunchtime that affected our active participation in the question and the answer section, or our presentations have been quite clear that did not raise any question. I can see only few comments, but I would like to invite all these three speakers. Maybe Mr. Henrik, you can also be part of this if you are available online. And please, in very short, in 1 minute, you could please respond to the question which I am about to ask from all of you. And this is about what are the key new challenges for citizenship education that you in your work, in your as an academic, but also as an NGO, international NGO organization, you have seen or you have identified that needs responding or needs some kind of action, and what kind of opportunities are there for citizenship education from a lifelong learning perspective, particularly when it comes to challenges of the global nature. May I request the respondents to start with Miss Shanane? Maybe you could actually start, and then we move to Mr. Riley and my colleague Christiana. So what are the key new challenges for citizenship education, and what are the opportunities you see? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I would jump at that quickly and say, from the Caribbean, really Latin America and the Caribbean perspective, that's how I will answer it, but mainly the Caribbean. And that is the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has pushed persons, even persons who were moving lower middle, who have been pushed down as far as they are concerned. So the kinds of challenges that we were left with economically that have shifted persons' attention from working for the community to surviving. And so that pushes against the other more external, global, or even community objectives as people try to eke out a position for themselves and to find new footing. And so it goes back to that self-preservation, which is not necessarily wrong, but that it really counters and pulls your attention. It's like Maslow says, when you're busy looking at your own needs at the lower level, you're not able to engage at the other level. So immediate economic circumstances, I feel, within the Caribbean is now pushing against the larger issues of citizenship education.
Thank you so much. Mr. Riley?
Thanks for the question. Exactly, the first word which came to my mind is the polarization, because it's really, we're living a little bit in the situations where we have so multiple crises at the moment, and as a human beings, mainly only one thing is enough in your head. You can't really tackle about many things at the same time, and that's the COVID is very good example on that. But also, if I'm taking the European perspective at the moment, unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is really the top number one at the moment, and it's eating all the capacities of the people's thinking at the moment. But I would love to turn this as a possibility, and that's what we are trying to do, because in the crisis situation, people are really clever and they are really creative and they are really innovative and they're finding the solutions how to survive. And I really believe the good in every single human being, that when the circumstances force you a bit to jump out of your comfort zone, you find the solutions. And exactly then the learning comes to that. You need to really learn how to really tackle the situation. And I think that the old proverb, which is using is from the African proverb on saying that I am because we are. I think that it really matters about this solidarity, what we are seeing at the moment during the COVID, during the war in Ukraine, for example. It's really amazing that people really do care about their neighbors, their family, the other people. And that's, I think that there's really a lot of good elements on that we definitely need to celebrate that aspect as well.
Thank you so much. I think these are very important elements that we need to recognize. And I see several questions in the chat box, but also one question in the question and answer. Unfortunately, we don't have time to respond to, but I would like to invite the respondents as well as speakers to please look at the questions. Particularly, one of the questions is about the thoughts on the tensions between our responsibilities as global citizens and increasingly narrow nationalistic interpretations of what it means to be a citizen at the national level, and how does it impact the educational curricula at all levels, including adult education in particular. And this question came from Jordan Naidu, our director at the Institute for Educational Planning. And another question which was posted here, which I would like to invite also respondents to maybe respond in writing, about how do we perceive the struggle contradiction between national citizenship and global citizenship. Again, this similar to Jordan's question. Could you give examples of how your organizations, ICAI, Ban Ki-moon Center, but also the Bridge 47, actually tackling and advising educators to tackle such distorted notions of nationalistic perspective of citizenship and versus global citizenship? And I think I want to, unfortunately, Christiana, I won't give floor to you. I would like to conclude this session as much as I want to continue a conversation and invite my colleague Raul Valdez-Cotero to actually bring our attention to the issue of global, the changing nature of labor market and world of work, and respond to some of the questions that the UIL is working, but also will be working in the future. Raul, the floor is yours. I'm really sorry for the participants if your questions were not responded. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presenters and speakers.
Thank you very much, Rakat. It's a pity because the discussion was really very interesting, and this has been the case with the other panels, but we need to continue. We need to go forward in the celebration, and well, particularly we're now moving into this panel 6, the changing world of work. We know that new skills are constantly emerging and that uncertainty is becoming the norm. So the objective of this panel will be to highlight the role of lifelong learning in the context of the changing world of work, and also will be able to inspire UIL's future work on this particular topic. We will be talking about facts and figures on the changing world of work, the role of lifelong learning therein, and the challenges and solutions in the context. We have a great set of panelists for the introduction of the scene. We have Professor Philip Brown from Cardiff University, For presenting UIL's activities, we'll have Mrs. Marie Macaulay, program specialist at UIL. And we have two excellent respondents. One, Mr. Diego Romero from Medellin, Colombia, and Mr. Ahmed Said Al Hussein, the mayor of one UNESCO learning city in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UIL Industrial City. So participants, again, can pose their questions in the Q&A box while speakers are presenting, and these questions will either be directed to speakers or addressed by me through the speakers. Participants can also share good practices on lifelong learning in the world of work. So without further delay, I would like to move to the introductory speaker of the panel, Mr. Philip Brown. From Cardiff University in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And Philip is a distinguished research professor at Cardiff University. And for over 25 years, he's been studying the future of work across advanced and emerging economies, interviewing many senior managers and executives in leading transnational companies and senior policymakers in countries including China, Germany, Finland, Vietnam, the United Kingdom, Singapore, etc. Phil, thanks for joining us today. The floor is yours. You have 8 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a great pleasure to be part of your celebration. And I talk to you from Ho Chi Minh, which is where I'm currently conducting research. After 25 years, I still don't understand the future of work and certainly the changing context around it, which is a major challenge for us all. And the basic point I want to make is how we understand these changes, and especially how we understand, for example, the fourth industrial revolution, which we hear a lot about, is really very, very important because it shapes the context in which we think about the future of work and the wider view of, in relation to education. So what I want to do is just present two positions and then raise a few issues. It seems, I think a lot of people would agree, and I certainly would agree with the idea that we're at a bit of a crossroads. There's a interconnection of different kinds of technologies around AI, robotics, Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, all these sorts of technologies seem to be converging in ways which allow us to not only produce new things, but crucially to do the things we already do in different kinds of ways. And I want to explore that a bit later. And also one of the things that greatly interests me in relation to this is also the role of digital platforms, which in some ways could be seen as akin to the production lines of the last century. And what's for sure is that however we think about the fourth industrial revolution, it basically is at an early stage, but how we think about it is real in its consequences. Because it strikes me that we don't live in a particular new age of invention. We live in an age of recombination. And what we've seen is a lot of unraveling, not just around technology, but broader social institutions around work have been unraveling. Some of this has been deliberate. So there's been an unbundling because the technology allows for a more detailed specification of the nature of work, the nature of skills, which has implications for our thinking about learning. And also we know that industrial revolutions are never simply technological. They're also about the social, we've just heard about issues of inclusion, about polarization, which are a central part of any discussion, I think, today about the future of work, because the technology is not destiny. Now, the dominant way of thinking about this, and informs a lot of work around learning and lifelong learning and skills, is to continue to assume what we might call a labor scarcity view. And this is the idea that advances in technology drive up the demand for skill. And we've heard a lot about skill bias, technological change over the last couple of decades. And that also links to the idea of human capital theory, which again is also based on a view that there's a scarcity of people with the right skills. Now, the question is, what are the right skills? But if we can gain those skills and we can gain that learning, then the assumption is that we will be able to find meaningful employment offering a decent standard of living. So here then, under labour scarcity, the focus is on the supply side, an assumed race between education and technology. Can education and can lifelong learning keep up with the technology? But even within this view, there's a recognition of the changing definition of high skills and what needs to be learned. And we've heard, as you all well know, a lot about what robots can't do, and to focus on that, on the non-routine cognitive skills, on emotional intelligence and such things as being the things that human beings should focus on. But what we also find is that there's a lot of discussion about big data and using big data as a way of getting a better understanding of what the employers need, and therefore molding education and training reforms to meet those particular needs. And again, we therefore hear a lot about STEM, and we hear a lot about digital skills and coding, based upon some view that what we need is an agile workforce who will be operating over a very large number of years, so that the lifelong learning aspect of it becomes almost like a form of lifelong employability. And what bothers me about this is that narrowing view of education. But what also bothers me equally as much, if not more, is that it fails to understand the real changes at work and the real changes in business models driven by technology. Now, we're not seeing the end of work, you know, the idea that lots of jobs be wiped out by automation. That's not the case. But what we are seeing is that we are not creating enough decent quality jobs that match people's expectations and their qualifications. So it's not just an alignment problem that we confront between education and work, but it's a structural problem. And it's a structural problem that creates issues around supply and around what the purpose of education. But I think it's very important for us to get a better understanding of what's happening in labour markets, what's happening in workplaces, because the key challenge is, how do we move the economy? How do we get employers and companies to really think about the ways in which those technologies are being used, because they can be used in different ways? So how do we enhance labour through technological change to be productive, rather than simply relying on cost cutting? Now, it seems to me, therefore, that we've got a major kind of cognitive challenge. We hear a lot about robotic process automation. That is, that it attacks from the bottom up. It basically automates routine jobs, but it creates space then for people to move up the value chain. I'm very skeptical of this particular view, because it's not that the technologies directly substitute in the sense of robots for teachers, but it's rather that the technologies allow companies to reorganize knowledge forms of work and technical forms of work in ways which actually can lead to a decline in discretion and skill. So it re-stratifies managerial, professional and technical forms of jobs. So I reject the idea that we are seeing a hollowing out of the middle of the labour market. There's no real evidence of that, but the middle of the labour market is changing its character. So this leads us to a number of questions. So however you look at this, labour scarcity, job scarcity, both view the need for important changes in educational reform. Both recognise the need for lifelong learning, but what that might mean could be significantly different, and how it relates to the realities of what's happening at work is going to be a major challenge. And we're seeing already the shift away from this kind of idea of a race to higher education, the race to some kind of knowledge economy, which assumed was going to be there. But there's a growing recognition that that isn't necessarily the case. So what the worry is you get that narrowing of educational purpose, and also it raises old questions, therefore, about, for example, the role of vocational education, which in turn raised problems around parity of esteem, inequalities, and outdated funding models, which are crucial in terms of thinking about lifelong learning.
Philip, I'm sorry, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. This is my last slide. So, and one aspect of that, of course, is that with the pandemic, we've seen how hybrid forms of work, which are not going away, how that is going to impact on our on basically the workplace as a place of learning, and the ways in which that might be hollowing out that workplace, which I think is important for us. The other aspect of this, I think, is that for far too long, we've assumed that people can develop themselves and their human talents simply through work. And what we are actually having to recognize is the underutilization of human talent, and thinking about how that broader view of lifelong learning, which has been discussed in this symposium, how that links into notions of work and changing notions of work. Because ultimately what we're talking about is what does it mean to be human, and how are we going to develop new kinds of understanding about the role of AI and cognitive, artificial cognitive intelligence, as opposed to some broader sense of social collective intelligence, which is so important, I think, to any thinking about lifelong learning. Sorry, it's a bit rushed, but anyway. Okay.
But many thanks for the
Okay.
enlightening presentation in rethinking the work, education, and lifelong learning in the fourth industrial revolution, where mainly learning that I like this phrase very much. Technology is not destiny, no automatic win-win. But also your reference to labor scarcity is not the end of work, but there are not going to be enough jobs of the kind that people are qualified for or expecting for. And well, I think generates a flow of income over the career path. What we need, we will continue discussing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfectly fine. Well, thank you very much. We'll continue then, and I will ask my colleague Marie Macaulay, program specialist, to present the UIL activities on the changing world of work that UIL has been working on and that will be working in the coming years. So, Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raoul. I hope you can hear me well as well.
Yes.
Thank you. I will be speaking in French in just a second, just to thank Philip for the really nice introduction to the topic, and also to say that I hope that what I'll be speaking about specifically in relation to UIL's activity will tie into some of those challenges you mentioned, and hopefully highlight the role that lifelong learning can play in dealing with some of those challenges. So I'll just be switching to French now. Bonjour à tous. Merci.
So hello, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm going to speak about the way the working world is changing and how UIL is going to work on the challenges that are associated with it. So we are living in a context of rapid changes, and the workplace becomes a place to learn new technologies, recessions, the economy, also demographic changes, and external shocks like the one of the COVID-19 pandemic can change the workplace and also the way we participate in the labor market. So every day it is difficult to foresee what the next skills will be that are demanded. And as such, lifelong learning is a right that allows for people to adapt to this ever-changing context. So it is necessary to have lifelong learning, to also to construct more inclusive societies that are more that are fairer and that allow for personal development. The UIL program for the changing work context has 3 focal points: digitization, climate change, and demographic changes. And these 3 trends have an impact an important impact on the labor market. I'm going to give you an overview, and then I will speak about more specific elements, how UIL wants to tackle these challenges. So let's start with digitization. Technological developments that we see evolve a lot, constantly, and also answering the new digital resources that we see. And digital platforms allow for better access, but also better possibilities to learn. You can get engaged in different curricula, perfectioning your skills, requalifying, or both. So this goes further than online learning. There are innovative learning schemes like augmented reality. So during the COVID pandemic, this has shown clearly that we need better support and organizations to enhance the knowledge of adult educators. We have the curriculum global that helps with that to enhance digital knowledge for adult educators. So this helps them to use these technologies in their teachings and also in administrative tasks. Second challenge around the sustainable development. We need to do that in order to combat the effects of climate change. It is essential to arrive at a sustainable production and consumption. And here, adult learning must be part of this transformation to have a more inclusive, sustainable development. On the labor market, it will be necessary to prepare workers and those who look for jobs for their new employment and give them the necessary skills to make use of technologies. These are the trends, these are the focal points of UIL, and we try to come up with strategies in order to facilitate this transformation, this transition, with proactive education policies that make use of the tools that we can put in place. And now there's another one, demographic changes. In today's world, we live longer. There's less and less youngsters that come on the labor market, and the age profile becomes ever older. People have to work longer, and the retirement age is pushed back in many countries. In this aging population, where people need to be active for a longer time, there is a need to perfection and to requalify skills. There is also a large chunk of population that is displaced because of conflicts or other reasons. So they as well need to have the possibility to be active in the civil society and in the political realm and to solve social problems. So UIL will focus on developing programs of lifelong learning that take into account the needs of older learners to help them stay up to scratch for using the new technologies and to help themselves. So now, well, I have already addressed certain challenges. I'm going to speak about more specific strategies and points of our activities. So we want to make progress when it comes to offering lifelong learning, to have a smoother transition between learning and entering the job market, and to be able to tackle challenges in at the workplace. So this goes for national programs, CNC. So it's about recognizing certain learnings. These systems allow to register and to recognize the learning results of certain persons in another country. And in this framework, UIL establishes certain topics around different axes. It is about supporting the development of VAEs in the world through capacity building in the member states, and also research axes in the private sector with the mechanisms of VAE and with micro-certification and credits that are recognized by certain cities and local players, local stakeholders. This also goes for green competencies, for green jobs. We want to enable people to acquire knowledge that allows them to work in so-called green jobs. So obviously, university education is also part of that in order to enhance the access to learning opportunities. For instance, for non-traditional learners, like those that we see in aging populations. So we try to contribute to the improvement and the requalification of skills, and we will continue our research work in this area. And we want to work in the partnership, for instance, with the Shanghai University when it comes to addressing the needs of aging populations. And in order to empower citizens during this transition to a more sustainable world, we want to come up to make sure that these strategies are part of local policies. So we try to really tailor-make solutions for those who are looking for new jobs. We do it in cooperation with local stakeholders in order to facilitate the transition on the local level, transition to the labor market. And we are going to look into certain activities, innovative research methods in order to create a learning landscape, and we want to forge partnerships with the private sector and inform more generally on capacity building in a perspective of lifelong learning at the local level. So this is what I had to present. This is how we want to tackle the challenges of a the universe of working that is changing.
Digitalization, climate change, demographic changes, and how they are impacting the labor market. I will provide how UIL is and will continue addressing these key challenges with its work. Well, I will now ask the two respondents of the session to complement on the issues of the changing world of work and related UIL activities against the background of their own perspective, and of course the presentation by Philip Brown. I will use the opportunity to switch. It's my chance to switch into Spanish, so I will do it. La primera reacción será por parte del señor Diego.
Response will be by Diego Romero, director of Pro Medellin Foundation from Colombia. He's a social communicator and psychologist, and he has been working as a consultant of the organization Impulsa Colombia. He has been also a counselor for the Medellin mayor, and he is, as I've said, the director of Pro Medellin, and he focuses on green transition and sustainability. Thank you so much to the UNESCO Institute for inviting us to speak today, and congratulations for your great work done around education all over the world. Medellin is a city that is changing a lot, and we are changing our economic perspective from a very commercial perspective to a a perspective in which the capacities for the fourth revolution are going to be very important for our youth to be able to find a job in the future. We also want to create a local ecosystem with global solutions. The talent of our city and the solutions that we might generate to tackle our problems in the territory are meant to be exported. We are meant to offer our solutions to the wider world. Our companies in Medellin are focused on the program of education changing. Education is very important for our business activities in the city and also to develop solutions within the territory. And we've been working on creating public policies related to science, innovation, and technology. And we want to create social technical systems that help human development on the ground. These programs are related to mobility, health, food security, and so on. So we are creating tables where research teams from the universities are gathering together, and we also have representatives from the business sector joining them around these tables. We also have governmental representatives on these tables, and they sit together and chat and try to find a way in which education is also understood as a tool for sustainable development. And we also want to foster communication by doing this. We've seen that we had some challenges regarding communication between governments, businesses, and the academia. Not just universities, but the whole academic sector, from basic schools, primary schools to high universities. We've seen that these communication problems have posed challenges and obstacles to find common solutions. And what we've been doing in Medellin is trying to get all these actors together and find solutions for to put forward local and international solutions to global problems. Medellin is also building 22 technological centers. We have different neighborhoods in Medellin, and in each neighborhood we are building a technology center where several training programs will be available for young people. These will be short training courses from 3 or 6 months to several years. And these training programs will enable these young people, to access the labor market. We have also made available thousands of computers. In a city such as Medellin, not everyone has access to hardware such as computers, and this makes even more difficult you have just 1 minute to wrap up. So not everyone has a computer, and we've been distributing computers among the poorest young people in the city. And this is something very important, because this is going to guarantee that companies will have a more qualified staff in the future. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, for sharing Medellin's experience, and thank you as well, because it seems you are finding ways, you are finding new articulations with these three-party meetings and together with international cooperation to tackle the different challenges in the city.
Mr. Said Al Hussein, he's the mayor of the UNESCO Learning City of UIL Industrial City. in Saudi Arabia, who sent a video message. Mr. Abdullah Al-Jumai is with us now, and he will be responding some inquiries after the presentation. So we will present the video of Mr. Ahmed Said Al-Hussein.
Greetings and a great afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Very honored and happy to be part of this team in addressing the changing world of work. We are living in a dynamic world of change, and the change is happening faster than ever before. The technological advancement has enabled change to happen in a very fast and vast pattern. What's very interesting is what happened in the area or field of education, whereby the change that took place has enabled life learning to be much easier to share, codify, and develop. Allow me now to start the presentation by sharing with you an overview of Jubail Industrial City. Now in this slide, you'll be looking at historical facts of Jubail City and geographical location. Moving on to the next stream of statistics that also shows some facts about the city, starting from the number of hospitals that are covered by both private and government sector, number of commercial license, and the total workforce of employment in the city, and finally, the number of industries that exist in the cities, and that includes small and medium and large, or what we call primary and secondary businesses. Getting into the education side, as you can see, the total number of male and female students that are within the different schools and institutes and colleges of Jubail Industrial City, and then showing the numbers that are in both the higher education and public education. I always like to compare between the industrial system and the education system. In the industrial system, we have a pipeline that connect industries to each other and make sure that the products move from one station to the other until there is the completion of the final product. And the pipelines are in a way the veins of the industries and the one that connects the industries to each other and makes integration easier, efficient, and effective. Pipelines are one example of the logistical system. Now, likewise, in education, we have a value chain, and that value chain needs to be connected to each other. We need to make sure that this stream of knowledge that flows into each stage of education is consistent, effective, and value-adding, starting from kindergarten all the way to college. And the end product is the quality of graduates. At each stage, we have a set of enrichment programs that comes along and after that period of education. And as you can see in the slide, there are various programs and training activities that takes place to equip our students with the skills they need. In addition to these enrichment programs, we also have provided various centers, accelerators, and incubators, and that is to apply and test ideas and research topics. In terms of employment, the Royal Commission of Jubail has scored the highest employment rate in the kingdom, and that is according to the Human Resources Development Fund report. And that was definitely the result of the quality of education that is in the city. To end, just as lifelong learning never ends or stops, the enhancement and improvement of education should also never stop. And this cannot be done alone. Through this network of learning cities, we will be able to share impactful ideas and great best practices. And together, we definitely will be able to make this world a better place. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the UNESCO Institute for Life Learning team for the wonderful support and for creating such venues of knowledge exchange that will help us learn from each other and make a better difference in our cities. Together with me is the Royal Commission Education team. They will be here to respond to any questions that you have. Once again,
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Ahmed Said Al Hussein, the mayor of the Jubail Industrial City, for sharing their valuable experience on this. Without further delay, I would like to move into the Q&A sessions, and there's a specific question for Philip, saying how and in what ways is the unbundling of work profits driven for shareholders, which dissembled economies from communities or based on institutional rule of law to safeguard standards, health and safety, and protect human rights whilst propelling entrepreneurial green and digitized economies with micro, small and medium enterprises by mobilizing new knowledge. I think it's a very specific question. It's just for you, I think.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, for me, the fundamental challenge is how do we develop a different narrative around the future of work and new technologies, which enable companies, if you like, to buy into it, and that would obviously include the sort of the green agenda. And there's lots of discussion about that, as we know, within business, but it's very often set aside from discussions really about technology and about issues, for example, of productivity. So for us, I think the issue is how to really work with companies. And there are a whole number of companies out there. In our current work, we've had more interest from the employers than we've had in anything we've done previously. So there is some optimism that we can develop an alternative way of thinking about these things. But the dominant position, if you take, for example, a lot of the major consultancy companies, they are selling technology as cost cutting. And if that is the only dominant model that is being sold to companies, we've got a major problem. So we need to I think, have a very realistic discussion about how we can move this agenda forward in concrete terms, in a way that national policy makers understand, and in a way that allows us to connect with the real concerns of employers, whether they be larger companies or SMEs.
Thank you very much, Philip. I would like to using the question we have in the Q&A session, and I will pose it like this: how can we promote opportunities for reskilling and upskilling for green jobs available throughout people's lives? And I would like to ask the presenters to respond this in we have very short time, less than 1 minute to each one. I don't know who'd like to start. We'll say Marie.
Thank you, Raul.
Merci, Raul.
Very well, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, how can we promote green skills and reskilling and upskilling for all? Was that the question? You're muted, Raul, so I cannot hear you.
Thank you. Yes. How can we promote opportunities for reskilling, upskilling for green skills available throughout people's life? This is a general one for all.
This is a general one, and I think that's really going to be part of our efforts as well as we look more and more into this field of greening jobs, upskilling, reskilling pathways for the green economy. How can we promote it? I think the narrative currently ongoing with climate change and the need for reskilling and upskilling is making it more and more obvious. But in the case of UIL, it's going to be about establishing partnerships, especially with the private sector, understanding the needs of the labor markets as well, and finding ways of making it more accessible in terms of transition. So how do we ensure that people have access to the different transitions to develop or enhance their skills and adapt them to these green jobs and the new emerging trends within the labor market around green economies. So I think those are some of the elements that we'll be working around specifically at UIL for creating more awareness around the need for these green jobs, but also how do we respond to the existing needs that we might not all be aware of through the private sector and labor market.
Thank you very much, Marie. Diego, would you like to add on this one?
Bueno, para nosotros es muy importante el lifelong.
Well, for us, lifelong learning is extremely important. For us here in Medellin, because the fact of renewing your knowledge permanently as the market changes is crucial. And of course, international market logic, it dictates this, and we see opportunities in, for example, software development, in coding, even for people who don't have a lot of skills yet in information technologies. So we have created a system for the governance of technology and science here in Medellin that allows us to engage youths who are studying in traditional schools, and so they can have an additional option of programs that allow them to connect to this new sector and these new opportunities. We can talk about, for example, artificial intelligence. We can talk about robotics. And these are all very important to us. So we're trying to create a framework, for example, for the aerospace industry, because we have some aerospace innovation hubs in countries such as Mexico and the United States, and we can be a strategic ally for them. So we want Medellin to become a software hub, a software valley, and that would allow us to provide services, to provide something complementary for this fourth industrial revolution. In addition to our existing educational system, we do have a specialized digital university. And these programs are shorter than traditional university programs, and the industry is also working closely with these programs.
1 minute to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to be part of this session, and thank you so much for being very helpful and for all the effort you have given us, and congratulations on your anniversary. Actually, if we go back to the infographic that His Excellency the Mayor presented, you will see a wide range of programs offered for ranging from the kindergarten up to the upper level, like up to college. And there is a variety of enrichment programs such as STEAM, STREAM, AI, and game-based activity for younger learners. And also, we have programs that usually occur during like the extracurricular hours outside of classes for all community members. And we have examples like the robot, the AEI, and all aim to be upskill all the younger generation to suit the 21st century skills. The infographic itself, we designed it to reflect like a fish eye. So our eyes are on all our communities. We want to ensure that all our members of our communities are inclusive and equitable and suitable for all ages and all gender, as well as our diverse community and culture. We try to promote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. Thank you very much. I'll just give the floor 30 seconds for to Philip just to make your last remarks on this.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my brief response is, yeah, what are green skills? So the question is, what is particular about green skills as opposed, for example, to digital skills? And what's particular about digital skills as opposed to some broader notion of competence or a wider sense of what an educated person might actually study? So for me, it's actually how we integrate and think more generally about what kind of human beings are we talking about? What kinds of future generation of people do we want to create? And we've heard about citizenship and such things. If we get too carried away with just putting in everything in little boxes, green skills, digital skills and such things, we're going to lose that broader picture. And that broader picture is really important, I think.
Well, thank you very much to all of you for this incredible discussion. I think we learn a lot and really challenge us to continue putting together the different pieces of work that you have been doing so great. Thank you very much. Thank you not just to the speakers but also to panelists in general for the active dialogue we have been having. So now we will have a break, 10 minutes break now. So we'll come back at 15:45 Central Asia time for the panel number 7, partnership. Thank you once again very much.